If you're looking for a simple to build garden bed, you've come to the right place. Costing a mere $30 to build, constructed of 6 cedar pickets and half a 4x4. This one is 3 foot by 6 foot, 12 inches deep. Before making any cuts, I like to just grab the pickets I'm using for the long sides and butt them up against each other to make sure that this seam is nice and tight. If your pickets had bowing or twisting, you might notice there's a little crack in the center, and that's difficult to get out later on. So I just grab some pickets, check them. All of my pickets are literally perfectly straight. I have them all neatly stacked up. I kind of fished around to try to find one that wasn't, but I'm not digging through my stacks. They all look pretty. To start, I cut 4 pickets to 70 inches long. This was mainly to remove the dog-eared section. Then I cut 2 pickets to 35 inches twice. I chose 35 inches because I could get 2 cuts from each picket to reduce waste. The ideal width of a garden bed is between 3 to 4 feet. This is so plants are within arm's reach from either side. Now grab your 4x4 and cut 4 pieces to 11 inches, or the height of both your pickets stacked up. I find which sides I want to be facing in by finding the 2 sides that I want to be facing out and up against those pickets so they're not visible. And with the sides that are visible, I like to cut a 45-degree profile to the top. It's a simple decorative upgrade that really fancies things up. I do not measure these out. I just find a spot on the miter saw and line up each time for that cut. And now we're on assembly. I like to assemble the shorter sides on my workbench and then move it to the ground afterwards, just so it's a little bit easier and manageable. Now, to start this out, you're going to take those mitered corners and make sure that they are facing both down and towards the middle. Down and towards the middle. That's going to ensure that when we put the pickets on the sides, those are facing the inner corners so that you would see them afterwards. Then we're going to take some Titebond 3. It is their only waterproof exterior glue. Titebond 2 is water resistant, and for outdoors, this does both. And we are going to apply a generous amount. Spread it around just a little bit so it doesn't squeeze out and ooze everywhere after. Glue for this is your best friend. That's really what's going to be holding everything together. I don't put a ton of screws into mine. You guys can if you'd like. It's literally just 2 in each board on each side. That's all I am using. So with this, find whichever side you want to be facing out towards the outside of the box. This will be inside if it is down. So figure out which one we like for that. That's a bad idea. I'm going to use a dummy board so that way I'm not gluing up to that. Start at the top, just because the top is what you guys will be seeing. Line it up so it is flush with the long side, and then repeat that for your other plank. I like to line them both up just in case I need to bump out the 4x4 a little bit. I can do so before I start screwing stuff down. And it also aligns both of these boards together at the other end. I am using a 1.5 inch GRK screw. They are rated for pressure treated if that's what you guys are using, and also they are outdoor ready and structural screws. And I like to keep it within about 2 inches of the side. I don't like to sink them off to the sides unless you wanted to see the screws. I like to hide them so you don't actually see the screws later on. And countersink them just a little bit, because when we do put that board on the top, it will help so it hides that board and it sits flush on there. And there is one side complete. I'm going to repeat that process for this side and the other short side. To assemble the long sides, it's the same process we use to assemble the short sides. However, this time the longer pickets will actually butt up to the edge of the shorter pickets on the sides. If that sun would have just hung up in that sky just a little bit, yeah, just a little bit longer. If you are absolutely hooked on only using 6 pickets, you're good to go. Throw this baby in the yard. However, if you wanted to fancy it up a little bit, go ahead and take some 11-inch just scrap cutoffs and put them onto the edges. And what this is going to do is not only hide this ugly face of your board, but also hides those screws so you don't see those on your planters. You see, at some point this goes from a volunteer position to salary. Now, you're going to take that board, put some glue onto it, and just make sure it is lined up with that top corner and the top of your actual garden bed. Once everything looks good, fire in a few nails. I am just using a 1-inch brad nail, 18 gauge. Then repeat the process for this top board. Line it up to here, line it up to the top. And by adding one to the center, you get away from this wonky letting the boards go wherever they want to, and it adds an extra piece of stabilization. With our long side being 70 inches, I make a mark at 35. When I take my little piece, I just eyeball it so that it looks centered. Line it up with the top of your project, butt a square up against there just to make sure it's not all wonky. Again, tip them up like I do everything. Put in some glue, tip them back down. Check them one more time because sometimes that glue causes things to shift around. And nail it into place. And I do not add one of these to the short sides. They're just not long enough to justify having their own bracing. So add one to the other side in the other corners, and you're done.